In this week's Throwback Thursday, we're taking a look at a time in history that mirrors what we endured in the past year. Eugene Fernandez has more on the yellow fever pandemic that once took a toll on the valley.
What we're going to talk about today is very, very pertinent for the time. Let's go back to biblical times when you had the four horsemen of the apocalypse. You had death, you had famine, you had war, and you had pestilence. Pestilence is the key word for the day. Pestilence means plagues, and you can understand why. Now let's get specifically to Brownsville and South Texas and how they played into this whole scenario. On the forming of Brownsville in 1848, immediately thereafterwards there was a huge yellow fever plague, and it claimed 1/3 of all the inhabitants of the area. As evidence of Brownsville's involvement in the plague, yellow fever, this area of the old city cemetery was first established in 1858 as a result of the mass deaths due to the malady. Yellow fever, 1858. 1858. 1858. An interesting note that was written in the annals of our medical history at Fort Brown in particular stated that there were so many people dying and there were various levels of comatose conditions of the affected that they were wondering if this person is dead or not. So what they did was they tied a string around the little finger, and they came back in an hour, and if that finger was swollen, the person was alive. If it weren't, they were buried. In Brownsville in particular, there was a very, very prominent historical feature that entered the picture, and that was Dr. Gorgas. Dr. Gorgas started studying yellow fever back at the end of the 19th century. The world was devastated by yellow fever because you had the Panama Canal, you had the Spanish-American War, and there were more troops that died from the malady than there were that actually died in warfare. Early on in the history of the treatment of these viruses and epidemics, it was understood that you had to quarantine. Now, that is so prevalent to what we have going on in today's world. They recognized that you had to isolate various pockets of people that were, say, infested with the disease. And they did so. They did so religiously. It is a great lament that South Texas and northern Mexico has had an affair with this death angel. It has changed the entire procedure as to how we colonize this part of the world. Many people went well before their time. And the efforts that were taken by the people that survived were built upon to keep us where we are today, alive. And the rest is history. For KVEO News, I'm Eugene Fernandez.